Welcome to the Butterfly Empire. It is me, your Butterfly Queen, and today we are covering Ted Bundy. Theodore Robert Bundy, to be exact. He was born November 24th, 1946. He was a serial killer who raped, kidnapped, murdered a dozen of young women. He confessed to 30 murders committed in 7 states between 1974 and 1978. His true victim total unknown. He would often charm the women, either lowering them to his vehicle parked in a more secluded area, which they would then be beaten unconscious, restrained, handcuffed, and taken elsewhere to be sexually assaulted and killed. He would often fake having an injury so people, like women, would help him, and he would pretend to be like law enforcement. And I remember this one video where he would pretend that he had like a broken leg or something, or if he was on crutches, he would have a woman come over and be like, "Hey, can you pick these keys up? I just dropped." And at that point, he's just like, "Wata!" You know, cool stuff. Cover that. Okay, 1975, Bundy was arrested and jailed in Utah for the aggravation of kidnapping and attempted criminal assault. He became a suspect in a lot of unsolved homicides in several different states. Let me quit turning my chair for you. Bundy engineered 2 dramatic escapes and committed further assaults in Florida, including 3 murders, before his ultimate recapture in 1978. For the Florida homicide, he received 3 death sentences and 2 trials and was executed in the electric chair in Florida on January 24th, 1989. He was being described as the most cold-hearted son of a bee you'll ever meet. And members of his defense team were also like, Ted was the most very definition of a heartless evil. When your own defense system thinks that you're guilty and they have to defend you, that's just no. Wild. Ted Bundy was born Theodore Robert Cowell in 1946. He has a movie about him, Crazy but Not Insane. He was not a product of incest because, most serial killers, they either have been incest, sexually assaulted as a child, treated horribly, years growing up, and it just like makes them go insane. So he was not. So first beginning of his life, he lived in Philadelphia suburb in Pennsylvania with his maternal grandparents who raised him as their own son to avoid a social stigma that accompanied birth without being married. You know, birth outside of wedlock kind of thing. But they don't know who his real father is. So, yeah. Bundy occasionally exhibited disturbing behavior at an early age. His youngest sister recalled awaking from a nap to find herself surrounded by knives from the kitchen and her 3-year-old nephew standing by the bed smiling. In some of the other interviews, Bundy spoke warmly of his grandparents and told Rule that he identified with, respected, and clung to his grandfather. In 1987, however, he and the other family members told attorneys that Samuel was a bully who beat the wife and dog, swung neighborhood cats by their tails, and expressed racist and xenophobic attributes, which is fear or dislike of anything which is perceived as being foreign or strange. In case you didn't know, because I didn't know what that word meant. Anywho, in 4 instances, they reported that threw Julia down a flight of stairs for oversleeping. He would sometimes speak aloud in unseen presence, and at least one flew into a violent rage when the questions of Bundy's paternity was raised. Bundy described his grandfather as a timid and obedient woman who grandmother as a timid and obedient woman who periodically underwent electrotherapy and for her depression and feared to leave their house towards the end of the life. These descriptions of Bundy's grandparents have been questioned in more recent investigations. Some locals remember Samuel as the fine man and expressed bewilderment in the reports of him being violent. In my opinion, when I heard the stuff that he's talking to unknown things, violent outrages, and all this stuff, that's like schizophrenia. So that's already running in his family, apparently. He was a raging alcoholic and animal abuser. And people used to say that's what made Ted the way he was, because he grew up with this. From my limited exposure to him, nothing could be farther from the truth. His daughter loved him dearly and had nothing but fond memories with him. In addition, Louise's sister, Audrey, stated that their mother could not leave her home because she suffered a stroke due to being overweight and was not mentally ill. In 1950, Louise changed her surname to Caldwell to Nessel, and the urging multiple family members left Philadelphia with Ted to live with the cousins Ellen and Jan in Washington. In 1951, Louise met Johnny Culper Buddy, a hospital cook, and an adult singles night at Tacoma's First Methodist Church. They married later that year, and Johnny formally adopted Ted. Johnny and Louise convened 4 children together, and through Johnny tried to include his adopted son in camping trips and other family activities. Bundy remembered being distant from him. He would later complain to a girlfriend that Johnny was not his real father, wasn't very bright, and didn't make much money. To mention, and I can't pronounce that. I'm not even going to try butchering it. I'm just going to call him Ain. He described roaming his neighborhood, picking through trash barrels in search of pictures of naked women. And attorney and author Polly Nelson, he said that pursued detective magazines and crime novels for stories that involved sexual violence, particularly when the stories were illustrated with pictures of dead and maimed women. In Letter to Rule, however, he asserted that he never ever read fact detective magazines and shuddered at the thought of anyone would. He once told Michael that he would consume large quantities of alcohol and canvass the community late at night in search of undraped windows where he could observe women undressing or whatever else could be seen. Psychologists claim that Bundy started fantasizing about women he saw while window peeping or that sentence made my brain just shut off. That's when a sentence is so mistyped and it makes your brain go error. Okay, started fantasizing about women he saw while peeping or elsewhere. that. Ah. Mimicking the accents of some politicians he listened to on the radio. In essence, he was fantasizing about being someone else, someone important. He was a mean-spirited kid. He liked to terrify people. He liked to be in charge. He liked to inflict pain, suffering, and fear. Bundy engaged in animal cruelty. He hung one of the stray cats in the neighborhood from one of the clotheslines in the backyard, doused it in lighter fluid, and set it on fire. I'm not going to go further. They gave sounds. Nope. Bundy would take younger children in the neighborhood in the woods and terrorize them. He'd take them out there, strip them down, take their clothes, he said. You hear them screaming for blocks. I mean, no matter where you were, you could hear them screaming. Holt added that Bundy built makeshift punji traps, body trapping stakes, made out of wood or bamboo, which is sharpened, heated, and usually set in a hole, usually deployed in a substatical number. Okay. Injuring at least one little girl went over there on top of Ted's tiger traps and got the whole side of her leg split open with the sharpest point of the stick that she landed on. So I'm guessing it's like you put it in like a round teepee shape in a hole. You can get in and out. You just stab yourself instead. Okay, so we're just gonna. He was a creepy kid in high school. Nobody knew how or why he didn't have friends or how he made any friends that he had. But after graduating from high school in 1965, Bundy attended a university from 1 year before transferring to another one in Washington to study Chinese. So he went to college just to study how to speak Chinese. Didn't know that was a thing. In 1960, he became romantically involved with a UV classmate, University of Washington, Diana Edwards. Bundy later described Edward as the only woman I ever loved. In early 1968, Bundy dropped out of college and worked a series of minimum wage jobs. He also volunteered at the Seattle office of Nelson Rockefeller's presidential campaign and became Arthur Fletcher's driver and bodyguard during Fletcher's campaign to lieutenant governor of Washington State. Edwards graduated in the spring of 1968 and left Washington for San Francisco. But he visited her later in the year, and he earned a scholarship to study Chinese at the Stanford University that summer. Okay, none of this. We already got the background. Cool. Yeah, we don't need any more. We already know he had horrible people watching growing up. He, the schizophrenia thing. He saw them murder animals, hurt animals, which he's also doing. He became a drunk. Cool. So we are already going to say that's his background. We don't need this longer video than needed. First, murders. First, I need coffee for all the speaking. Good coffee. He told different stories to different people and refused to divulge the species of his early crimes, even as he confessed the graphic detail to dozens of later murderers in days preceding his execution. He told Nelson that he attempted his first kidnapping in 1969 in Ocean City but did not kill anyone until sometime in 1971 in Seattle. He told psychiatrists that he killed 2 women in Atlantic City while visiting family in Philadelphia in 1969. Bundy hinted to homicide detectives that he committed a murder in Seattle in 1972 and another murder in 1973 that involved a hitchhiker near Tumwater, but he refused to elaborate. Rule and Kemp both believed that he might have started killing as a teenager. Bundy's earliest documented homicide were committed in 1974 when he was 27 years old, but his own admission he had then mastered the necessary skills in the era before DNA profiling to leave minimal and crumbling forensic evidence at crime scenes. Okay, Washington, Oregon. Shortly after midnight on January 4, 1974, around the time that he terminated his relationship with Edwards, Bundy entered the basement apartment of 18-year-old Karen Sparks. And Bundy was, in Bundy literature, a dancer and studied at UW in Western District, Seattle. After bludgeoning Sparks with a metal rod from her bed frame, he sexually assaulted her with the same rod. Oh, God! Oh, oh. Causing extensive internal injury, rupturing her bladder. You don't say. She remained unconscious in the hospital for 10 days, and although she survived, she was left with permanent brain damage, with significant loss to her vision and hearing. In the early morning hours of February 1st, Bundy broke into a basement room of a 20-year-old Linda Ann Healy, who broadcast morning radio weather reports for skiers. He beat her unconscious, dressed her in blue jeans and a white blouse and boots, and carried her away. Did the nasty before dumping her body. Necrophiliac. During the first half of 1974, female college students disappeared in the rate of about one per month. Down near Gail Manson, a 19-year-old student from Evergreen State College in Olympia, "60 miles southwest of Seattle, left her dorm to attend a jazz concert, but never arrived. Bundy claimed that he burned Mason's skull in the girlfriend's fireplace down to the last ash in a fit of paranoia and cleanliness. October 17th, 18-year-old Susan Elaine Rancourt disappeared with her way to a dorm room after evening advisors meeting. Two female Central winning students later came forward to report encounters, one of the night of Rancourt's disappearance, the other 3 nights earlier with a man wearing a sling, who asked for help carrying a load of books to his brown or tan Volkswagen. May 6th, Robert Catlin, 22. But he claims he spotted Parks in the cafeteria and persuaded her to go to him to a bar. After they got into his car, he tied up and gagged her. I'm not going to keep on. June 1st, Brenda Cole Ball, 22, disappeared after leaving the tavern. Was reported to be talking to a brown-haired man with his arm in a sling. In early hours of June 11th, 18-year-old UW student Jorgen, so I'm going to butcher it and say, vanished while walking down a brightly lit alley between her boyfriend's dorm room residence and her sorority house. The next morning, 3 Seattle homicide detectives and the criminal combed the entire alleyway on their hands and knees, finding nothing. Bundy later told Ketnell that he lured Hawkins to her car and knocked her unconscious with a crowbar after handcuffing her, blah blah blah. After Hawkins' disappearance was publicized, witnesses came forward to report seeing a man on crutches. Remember the crutches thing I was telling you about earlier? With a leg cast and carrying a briefcase in an alley behind a nearly dormanted of the night of disappearance. One woman recalled that a man asked her to help him carry the case to his car, a light brown Volkswagen Beetle. During this period, Bundy was working in Olympia as an assistant director of Seattle Crime Prevention Advisory Commission. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of words. Where he wrote a pamphlet for women on rape prevention. He was the one doing it, and also wrote pamphlets about how not to do it. Okay. Later, he worked in the Department of Emergency Services, a state government agency involved in the search of missing women. He met and began dating Carol Ann Boone, a twice-divorced mother of two who would play an important role in the final phase of his life 6 years later. So all in all, pretty much, he would prey on women's motherly skills to help people. And when they come to help, of course, he would bludgeon them. Okay. Four female witnesses described an attractive young man wearing a white tennis outfit and his left arm in sling, speaking with a light accent, perhaps Canadian or British, introducing himself as Ted. He asked for the help in unloading a sailboat from his tan or bronze-covered wagon. Three refused, one accompanied him as far as his car, saw that there was no sailboat, and fled. Three additional witnesses saw him approaching Janice Ann, a probation caseworker, with the sailboat story and watched her leave the beach in his company. After 4 hours later, Denise, a 19-year-old woman who was studying to become a computer programmer, left a picnic to go to a restroom and never was returned. Bundy told the FBI agents that Ott was still alive when he returned with Naslund, and he forced one to watch as he assaulted and murdered the other. But he later denied it in an interview. A composition sketch was printed in the newspaper when they were starting to catch on who he was. You know? September 2nd, Bundy raped and strangled a still unidentified hitchhiker in Idaho. He then returned the next day to photograph and dismember the corpse before disposing of the remains nearby river. October 2nd, he abducts 16-year-old Nancy. He says that he restrained her and put her into his vehicle and drove back to his apartment where he allegedly kept her for 24 hours. That her remains are buried near a park, but they were never found. Melissa Ann Smith, 17-year-old daughter of police chief, disappeared after leaving a pizza parlor around 9 p.m. Her new body was found nearby mountains area 9 days later. Postmortem examination indicates she had remained alive up to 7 days following her disappearance. Imagine what she was going through. Oof. Lauren Ann Aim, also 17, disappeared 25 miles south of Lehi and leaving a Halloween party by herself just after midnight. She was last seen trying to hitchhike. Her naked body was found by hikers 9 miles away. Bundy described the post-mortem rituals with the corpse, including hair shampooing and applying makeup. Late afternoon, November 8th, Bundy approached 18-year-old telephone operator Carol less than a mile from a restaurant where she was last seen. Anyways, he attempted to break into her car. He asked her to accompany her to a station to file a complaint. When the officer pointed out to Bundy that he was driving on a road that did not lead to the police station, he immediately pulled onto her shoulder and attempted to handcuff her. During the struggle, he inevitably fastened both handcuffs to the same wrist, and she was able to open the car door and escape. EEA. Later that evening, a 17-year-old student, Deborah, disappeared after leaving a theater project at the school to pick up her brother. The school's drama teacher and a student told police that a stranger had asked each of them to come out to the parking lot to identify a car. Another student later saw that the same man, pacing in the rear of the audition room, aka the auditorium, and the drama teacher spotted him again shortly before the end of the play. Outside the audition room, investigators found a key that unlocked the handcuffs removed to the officer's wrist. Bundy eventually admitted to abducting Kim and keeping her in his apartment for a day, stating she was lies during half of it. Okay, in 1975, Bundy shifted much of his criminal activity eastward from his base in Utah to Colorado. On January 12th, a 23-year-old woman registered nurse named Karen disappeared while walking down a halfway hallway between the elevator and her room. Damn! Not even leaving the building anymore. Sorry, nobody wants to hear me cough. Her new body was found a month later next to a dirt road just outside the resort. According to the coroner's report, she had been killed by blows to her head from a blunt instrument that left decisive linear grooved depressions on her skull. Her assailant had slit her left earlobe and her body also bore deep cuts from a sharp weapon. March 15th. A ski instructor, Julie, 26, disappeared while walking from her apartment to a dinner date with a friend. Bundy later told Colorado investigators that he approached Cunningham on crutches and asked her to help carry his ski boots to her car. The admissions were supported where he clubbed and handcuffed her before sexually assaulting her at a secondary site. He made the 6-hour drive from Salt Lake City to revisit her remains. Denise, 25, disappeared near Utah-Colorado border in Grand Junction on April 6 while riding her bicycle to her parents' house. Her bike and sandals were found under the viaduct near a railroad bridge. Bundy stated that he abducted Olivia, killed her in his car near the Utah state line, and dumped her body in the river. May 6th, Bundy parked outside a junior high school. After seeing 12-year-old Lynette Dawn Culver walking along by herself, he lured her into his vehicle before driving her to the Holiday Inn hotel. He did the duty, drowned her in the bathtub. He disappeared of her body. I'm tired of describing these nasty-ass things, so I'm just going to say doing the duty, because you already know what he does. Hits you over the head, rapes you, and then hides your body. You're done. So we're just going to say doing the deed. June 28th, 15-year-old Susan Curtis vanished from the campus. Her murder became Bundy's last confession, taped recording moments before he entered the execution chamber. The bodies, victims of Wilcox, Kent, Cunningham, Oliverson, Culver, and Curtis were never recovered. In August 1975, Bundy was baptized. What's the point? Although he was not an active participant in services and ignored most church restrictions, he would rather late be accommodated following his 1976 kidnapping convictions. When he asked religious preference after he arrested, Bundy answered Methodist, the religion of his childhood. Washington state investigators were still struggling to analyze the Pacific Northwestern murder spree that had entered and as abruptly as it began. In efforts to make sense of an overwhelming mass of data, they resorted to the then innovative strategy of complying a database. They used the payroll computer, a huge permanent machine. They created the computer for coincidence. Out of thousands of names, 26 turned up on 4 lists. One was Bundy. Detectives also immediately compiled a list of their 100 best suspects, and Bundy was on that list as well. He was literally on the top of the pile of suspects when word came from Utah of his arrest. August 16, 1975, Bundy was arrested by Utah Highway Patrol. Police did not have significant evidence to detain Bundy, so he was released on his own recognizance. Later, Bundy said that the searchers missed a hidden collection of Polaroid photos of his victims, which he destroyed after he was released. Wow. But he was put on 24-hour surveillance. September, Bundy sold his Volkswagen Beetle to a Midvale teenager. They dismantled it, and they searched it. They found hairs matching samples obtained from Campbell's body. Later, they also identified his strands microscopically indistinguishable. I was trying to pronounce those words. Microscopically indistinguishable. There we go. My brain is not braining. I am sorry. Hope y'all get a good laugh about that. The detective specialist concluded that the presence of hair strands on one car matching 3 different victims who had never met one another would be a coincidence of mind-boggling rarity. They put Bundy in a lineup. DeRanch immediately identified him as Officer Roseland. Hmm, okay. But more than enough evidence to charge him with aggravating kidnapping and attempted criminal assault. In that case, he was freed on a $15,000 bail paid by his parents, and spent more of the time being indictment and trial in Seattle, living in another's house. Again, had insufficient evidence to charge him with the Pacific murders, but kept him under close surveillance. When Ted and I stepped out the porch to go somewhere, so many unmarked police cars started up that it sounded like a beginning of Indy 500. Okay, so he escaped, you know, blah blah blah. Back in the jail, he escaped again. Back in the jail, escaped again. After his last escape, he entered a room of a 20-year-old Lisa and beat her unconscious, strangled her, tore up. Okay, I can't say that on video. Tore up her girl parts. Now he's a biter and bit her butt cheeks. Lord help me. I'm trying to keep a straight face here. He had, in the same house, he attacked Kathy Cleaner, breaking her jaw and deeply lacerating her shoulder, and Karen Chandler, who suffered a concussion, broken jaw, loss of teeth, and a crushed finger. She fought away Bundy, got away. The detectives determined that the 4 attacks took place in a total of less than 15 minutes. So he had tried to murder and do all the nasty to 4 people in 15 minutes. Let that sink in. After leaving the sorority house, he broke into a basement 8 blocks away and attacked a 21-year-old, dislocating her shoulder and fracturing her jaw and skull in 5 places. She was left with permanent deafness, equilibrium damage, and ended her dance career. Oh. Police found a semen stain and pantyhose mask containing 2 hairs similar to Bundy's in class and characteristics. Bundy drove 150 miles east to Jacksonville in a stolen van. In the parking lot, he approached a 14-year-old Leslie, the daughter of Jacksonville Police Department chief detectives, identified her as Richard Burton, fire department. But retraining of the paramedics' older brother arrived and then confronted him. The afternoon, he backtracked 60 miles where he was following a 12-year-old girl, Kimberly. 7 weeks after an intensive search, her partially mummified remains were found in a pig shed. She had had the bad stuff happen to her, but her throat was cut, and her downstairs areas was mutilated with a knife. He is just getting... It's like he got out of jail and decided to wreak havoc and chaos worse than he did before. February 12th, with insufficient money to pay his overdue rent and growing suspicion that police were closing in on him, Bundy stole a car, fled Tallahassee, driving westward. 3 days later, and around 11 a.m., he was stopped by a Pentecostal police officer. They were after wants and warrants. Checks showed his Volkswagen Beetle was stolen. But didn't they just sell it to those teenagers before? What? When he told him that he was under arrest, Bundy kicked his legs out from under him and took off running. Lee fired 2 warning shots and then gave the chase and tackled him. The two struggled over Lee's gun before the officer finally subdued and arrested Bundy. In the stolen vehicle, there were 3 sets of IDs belonging to the female students, 21 stolen credit cards, and a stolen television set. Also found wearing a pair of dark-ripped non-prescription glasses and a pair of plaid socks, later identified as a disguise worn by Richard Burton, Fire Department in Jacksonville. As Lee transported his suspect to jail unaware that he just arrested one of the 10 most wanted fugitives, he heard Bundy say, "I wish you had just killed me." On July 24, 1979, of the Bowman and Levy murders, 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder from assault on Kepner, the sorority girls, I'm not even going to try, and 2 counts of burglary. Imposed death sentences for the murder convictions. 6 months later, a second trial took place in Orlando for the abduction and murder of Leach. Bundy was found guilty once again in less than 8 hours deliberation due to eyewitnesses. Hold up. I was sitting here reading this, right? And you know that in the court of law that uh, a witness can't go against somebody that's married, blah, blah, blah. It's in certain states, not all of them, because also they could be witnesses and go against them. But this is about the trial that took place in Orlando. During the penalty phase of the Leach trial, Bundy took advantage of an obscure Florida law providing that a marriage declaration in court in the presence of a judge constitutes a legal marriage, and he was questioning Boone, who had moved to Florida to be near Bundy, had testified on his behalf during both trials, and was again testifying on his behalf of a character witness. He asked her to marry him. She accepted, and Bundy declared to the court they were legally married. February 10, 1980. Bundy was sentenced a 3rd time to death by electrocution. As the sentence was announced, he reportedly stood and shouted, "Tell the jury they were wrong!" This 3rd death sentence would be ultimately carried out nearly 9 years later. On October 24, 1982, Boone gave birth to a daughter, Rose Bundy. While conjunctivitis were not allowed in Florida State Prison, when Bundy was incarcerated, inmates were known to pool their money in order to bribe guards to allow them intimate time alone with their female visitors. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the death row confessions and execution. Woo, woo, woo. Shortly after the conclusions of Leach's trial and beginning of the long appeal process that followingly Bundy initiated a series of interviews with Stephanie McLeod, speaking mostly in third person to avoid stigma of confession, be like, if I did do this, or say that this person did that, those kind of things. He began for the first time to divulge details about his crimes and processes. Bundy recounted his career as a thief, confirming long-time suspicion that he had shoplifted virtually everything of substance that he owned. The big payoff for me, he said, was actually possessing whatever it was that I had stolen. I really enjoyed having something that I had wanted to and gone out and taken. Possession provided to be an important motive for rape and murder as well. Sexual assault, he said, fulfilling the need to totally possess his victims. Which I'm questioning, did he just not get enough time to make his own decisions, or did he see someone get their... Think. It'll click sometime. Oh well. At first, he killed his victim as a matter of expedience to eliminate the possibility of being caught, but later murder became part of the adventure. The ultimate possession was in fact the taking of the life, he said, and then the physical possession of the remains. Bundy had also confided in a special agent of the FBI. Hagmaker was struck by a deep, almost mystical satisfaction that Bundy took in murder. He said that after a while, murder is not just a crime of lust or violence. It becomes possession. That part of you becomes a part of you, and you two are forever one. And the grounds where you kill them or leave them become sacred to you, and you will always become drawn back to them. In 1984, prison guards found 2 hacksaw blades hidden in Bundy's cell. A steel bar in one of the cell's windows had been sawed completely through on top and bottom and glued back into place with the homemade soap-based adhesive. Several months later, the guards found out the unauthorized mirror, and Bundy was moved to a different cell. Shortly thereafter, he was changed for the disciplined interaction with unauthorized conspiracy with another high-profile criminal. Okay, moving on. Less than 15 hours before the scheduled execution, the court stayed and identified and remained the Chi Omega case for review of multiple technicalities, including Bundy's mental capacity to stand trial and erosion instructions by the trial judge during the penalty phase require the jury to break a 6-6 tie between life imprisonment and death penalty, which ultimately was never resolved. New date, November 18th, was then set to carry out the Leach sentence. Okay, moving on. Okay, so I done passed all the court dates and all this other stuff. Pathology. Bundy underwent multiple psychiatric exams, and he was initially made a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, but later changed her approach more than once. She also suggested the possibility of multiple personality disorders based on behavior described in interviews. He said he became weird on me. He did a metamorphosis in a body and facial change. He felt that was almost an odor emitted from him. He said almost a complete change of personality. That was the day I was scared of him. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Do 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 do. While experts found Bundy precise diagnosis elusive, the majority of evidence pointed away from his bipolar disorder or other psychosis and towards an antisocial personality disorder. Bundy displayed many personality traits typical found in those patients, often identified as sociopaths or psychopaths, such as outward charm and charming, little true personality and genuine insight beneath the facade. There were also evidence of narcissism, poor judgment, manipulative behavior. Upon assessment using checklist, Bundy was reported evaluated 39 of 40. Sociopaths are egotistic manipulators who think they can do or con anybody. Sometimes he manipulates even me. In the end, I always tell the graduate students that if they can find me a real, true psychopath, I'll buy them dinner. I never thought they existed, but I think Ted may have been the one, a true psychopath without any remorse or empathy at all. Mm. Okay. The night before his execution, Bundy confessed to 30 homicides, but the true total remains unknown, and Bundy occasionally made cryptic comments to encourage speculation. He told people that for every murder publicized, there could be one that was not. Agents proposed a total tally of 36. Bundy responded, add one digit to that and you'll have it. Ooh. Years later, he told Nelson the common estimate of 35 was accurate, but the captain wrote that Ted and I both knew the total was much higher. An interview stated the belief that Bundy had killed at least 50 or maybe 75. The first person he killed was a young boy when he was playing some kind of sex game in the woods, and so he must have only been 12, 13, 14 maybe. Ted told me at the interview that he killed over 100 people. Mm. He said at me and said, when you find the person that commits these other crimes that you think I committed, the person is going to be wanted for murder of women in 3 digits in 6 states. I don't think he ever knew how many he killed or why he killed them. On one evening before his execution, Bundy reviewed that his victim tally 30 homicide. In Washington, 11. In Utah, 8. Colorado, 3. In Florida, 3. In Oregon, 2. In Idaho, 2. In California, 1. 1974. January 4th, Karen Sparks. February 1st, Linda Haley. March 12th, Donna Gail Manson. April 17th, Susan Rancourt. May 6th, Roberta Parks. June 1st, Brenda Carol Bale. June 11th, Georgiana Hawkins. July 14th, Janice Ann Ott. July 14th, Denise Nesselt. Utah, October 2nd, Nancy Wilcox. October 18th, Melissa Ann Smith. October 31st, Lauren Ann Aim. November 8th, Carol DeRoch. November 8th, Deborah Jean Kent. 1975, January 12th, Kareen Campbell. March 15th, Julie Cunningham. April 6th, Denise Olveson. May 6th, Lynette Culver. June 28th, Susan Curtis. 1978, Florida, Margaret Bowman. January 15th, Lisa Jeanette Levy. January 15th, Corinne Chandler. January 15th, Kathy Kleiner. January 15th, Cheryl Thomas. February 9th, Kimberly Diane Leach. And multiple unconfirmed, Anne Marie Burr, Susan Margaret Davis, Elizabeth Porter Perry, Lonnie Reed Tumble, Lisa Wick, Lacey Margaret LePage, Rita Curran, sorry about that, Vicki Lynn Holler, Susan Ray Judas, Rita Lorraine Jolly, Catherine Mary Devine, Brenda Jo Baker, Sandra Jean Weaver, Rhonda Staple, Millie Cooley, Shelley Robertson, Nancy Baird, Deborah Dan Smith, and J. Catherine Harmon. Okay? And there is multiple books and films, television. Damn. But that, ladies and gentlemen, added or subtracting, that is Ted Bundy. But I thank you guys for watching The Butterfly Empire, also listening, and we love you. Bye.